This podcast is sponsored by Sweetwater Bikes, Western Pennsylvania's largest gravel bike shop. Sweetwater Bikes is also home of the Whiskey Rebellion Gravel 200K. And coming in 2022 for all of our ultra endurance fans, Sweetwater Bikes will launch Penns Woods Passage, PA's first 850-mile gravel backpacking loop. You can find out more about these races by following Sweetwater Bikes on Instagram, Facebook, and sweetwaterbikes.com. Now, on with the show. Welcome to 5339. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Nick. Today we're talking to Lael Wilcox.
Hell yeah, super excited.
Yeah, this one was fun. But before we talk to Lael, what's up, man? What's new?
Not too much. About less than 2 weeks to go to surgery.
Less than 2 weeks to the bikes going on vacation then?
Yeah, exactly. Got 30 miles until I hit 6,000 for the year. So
Nice.
I'll probably going to try to do that outside this week.
Night ride?
Yeah, probably. The whole work thing gets in the way.
Yeah, that and the short days.
Oh, that too. The sun does not help.
The lack thereof.
Yeah.
But we are like 10 days away from the days getting longer again, which is nice.
It is pretty exciting, and I can't wait.
So. At least I got that going for me, which is nice.
Yeah.
Big hitter, the llama.
Yeah, so aside from receiving total consciousness on your deathbed, what's up with you?
We're actually doing another gravel ride tomorrow. Super pumped for that. Chain lube testing is taking chapter 2 for me. My first bike has the super secret on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of amazes me how smooth everything feels, even just when it's on the stand. And that goes for the squirt and the nano lubes that we were testing too. It's the wax is just the way to go, in my opinion, unless you have like a very specific climate that you're riding in that makes it that you need something other than the dry wax. I've ridden
Alaska?
it wet. I don't know. Yeah, if it's like super cold, but I've ridden it in wet. I've ridden it in dry, and I'm a wax fan.
I'll be interested to see what happens tomorrow on your route now that you are going on a proper gravel ride, and it rained all day today.
Yeah,
so I'll be interested.
Change of clothes will be required to ride home in.
Oh yeah. Welcome to actual gravel riding.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it for 2 reasons. One, it's the first time I get to ride gravel with Ted, so I'll finally get to see the Grail.
Are you gonna drool with the hover bar?
You forget I almost had a Grail.
I know.
Way too. I almost got the steal of a lifetime on a Grail, and unfortunately it fell through. But yeah, I'm excited for that. You and I did my first night ride about a week ago now.
We did, and you said it was. I said, how was it? You go, eh.
Yeah, I mean, I joked about this.
Enthusiasm was oozing.
Yeah, I joked about it with you, and I just said it's kind of like Forrest Gump. Everyone was like, "Oh, this is the greatest thing ever," and I was like, "It didn't suck. I mean, I liked it, but I wasn't blown away by it."
We can blame Gen A.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably do it again, but it's not something I'm moved by.
I think the magic to night riding is, and I know I've said this before, but it probably comes down to whenever you're by yourself and you're on that perfect route or whatever where there's no exterior light. It's just you and your route and 30 feet in front of you. I think that's where the magic is. Group night riding's cool too, because you do feel like you're going super fast, but you're doing 15.
That was the one thing I definitely noticed right away is I felt like we were going so fast, and I looked down and we were doing 15, 14. It felt like we were doing 22 or 23.
I felt like we were flying, and then
I mean, it would have been hilarious if it was like flurrying, and it would have felt like we were going light speed from Star Wars with the snowflake zooming past. But yeah, I mean that's kind of it. Trying to take advantage of the good days when there's daylight, since there's a shortage of that currently.
It's a good thing that we've based our time switching on a mode of transportation that's almost obsolete, except for novelty purposes. But,
yeah. But before we get to Lael, moving into my favorite segment of our episodes, which is the fan questions.
Absolutely, yeah. So our first question comes from, I'm sick of it, all one word. Seriously, how do you guys keep on ticking along to 6,000 miles? I know there is burnout, but I got sick of biking at 1,700 miles. I love biking, but I have no motivation. Cheers, Ben from Düsseldorf, Germany.
So you and I are going to have very different answers to this.
Yeah, we both do things a little bit differently whenever it comes to this area.
Yeah.
I'll let you go first.
Well, I guess the stage is mine. Yeah, I think the first thing is finding just new places to ride. And even if it's the same place you ride, maybe a different combination of roads or a different order or something, that's big for me, is to not ride the same thing too many times over and over again. I mean, kind of the Sunday Robinson ride aside.
Even that, though, sometimes you need
Well,
to
I'm not saying it's like the most thrilling thing in the world, but it does, like, if you got to change it up a little bit. I also think setting a goal is important, and then breaking it down to smaller, more manageable chunks.
I agree. The goal is super key, I think.
Yeah. So I set, and I think you did the same thing in January. You set your annual mileage to 6,000
every January.
But I have my weekly set to 100 miles and my monthly set to 500 miles. I don't do a lot of big rides. I mean, I did a metric this year, and I do some 40 and 50 mile rides, but I don't do like overly long rides.
You're not riding like Chuck every day?
No, I don't have time to ride like Chuck does every day.
I wish.
Right. But I think setting the goal is important, but I also think changing up why you're riding. So, I mean, there's days that, I'm out with you and Clippy and the mayor and the Quam, and we're just out having a good time, and it's more of a social ride, or, I add structure in at times. So, I might do some zone 2, or I might do some interval training on the trainer, but kind of changing the why I'm riding. I mean, our listeners know that I do this a lot to manage my diabetes as well. And so there's days that I'm like, I don't know that I really want to ride, but I know
diabetes.
Wilford Brimley's, in the back of my head telling me to ride. So, but yeah, that's, set a goal, change up where you're riding, and change up why you're riding. And I think you'll find that the miles tick by quicker if you're not repeating the same kind of ride over and over and over again.
Yeah. So for me, it's a little bit the same. I mean, the goal, obviously, but
that's probably the only part of it that we overlap on.
Yeah, because like for me, I experience burnout probably every 5 weeks, 5 to 6 weeks. And, basically like taking a break is nice. Sometimes compulsive want to ride doesn't go away. So how I kind of mitigate that is by either introducing bike packing or mountain biking or something else on a bike, even if it's just going for a ride with a friend on a tandem or something like that, which that's an interesting experience all to itself, but especially if they're non-cyclists.
I was going to say, especially if that friend is not a cyclist.
Yes. But, changing it up is definitely important. And also looking like you may use Strava to, keep track of your miles and things like that. Looking at what you've done thus far, especially whenever you're getting into June and July, and be like, holy crap, I'm halfway through my goal. That's a nice reminder to look at things and go, I can do this. Like,
I think that's a important point you made there. And it's kind of almost a sense of pride to say, hey, I set this goal, and I don't know. I actually feel kind of that sense of pride every time I tick over another 1,000 for the year.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, cool. I did. Cool. It's February and I'm already 1,000 miles in. Oh, it's whatever. And now I'm 2,000 or 3,000. Like I think seeing what you've done is, whether that's you're celebrating every time you tick over 1,000 miles, 10,000 miles for some of us that have a lot more time to ride. And, for somebody that is getting burned out at 1,700, every 500 miles is a big turning point.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And just taking breaks and,
Dare we say rest days?
No, I'm not going to say it. Sorry.
Does it apply to the drinking game if I say rest days? Can one of our listeners clarify that?
Yeah, we haven't gotten clarification on this drinking game that we were informed of. Nick can't say hockey, and I can't say
rest day.
There you go.
Kind of turning into the listener's version of our Aero and Carbon game from earlier in the year.
I still never paid you on that.
I guess I owe you $1 because I just said the A word.
Boy. So our second question is from Just the Tip, all capitalized as where it should be, but it is all one word.
Yeah. This is kind of an Ask a Mechanic question, which is, I like these.
Yeah. I'll let you read this one off.
So Just the Tip would like to know, what can I use if I don't have a cable cap? I never seem to have them whenever I need them, and I hate whenever my cable frays, which I can second that. Frayed cables suck.
Yes, it's the worst.
The worst is when one of your cables slips and you have to retension it, and it frays when you tension it again. If this was a brand new cable and now it's fraying. But you have a really good method for this. I mean, there's some kind of hacks that you can use if you're
zip
stuck.
Ties,
yeah,
tape.
I mean, you can use zip ties if you're stuck. You can certainly use electrical or masking tape or duct tape. I like your duct tape.
No, it's so sticky.
In a pinch, it would work.
Yeah, I mean,
I like
guess.
your method. I mean, I've kind of always just used the cap because anytime you get a set of cables, they come with like 4 caps.
Yeah, but
So
whenever you rip that package open after, you definitely don't read the directions. Those caps go everywhere.
wait, there's directions?
Apparently, I've never read them.
I thought that was just a myth.
I use shrink tube actually for like electrical applications. I'm a kind of a nerd, so I always have some shrink tube on
Understatement of the
hand.
year.
It is what it is. But I always have shrink tube on hand, conveniently in the same size as most brake and shift cables. So that's what I use.
It provides a really clean cable end.
Your cable just disappears after it is
Yeah.
passes through.
The fashionist in me says you can match your cable and shrink tube with the paint on your bike, which is
You can.
I mean, that's like that extra little fine tuning of, where you're like adding the dust caps on your stems to match. Like,
it's a bit much.
that gets us super nice.
Yeah, but I will say if you do end up going down the shrink tube route, look for 3x shrink factor. It tends to, the smaller ones tend to shrink a little bit better, and that's my advice on that. But
yeah, but the shrink tube does give a really clean look, regardless of what color the shrink tube actually is.
yeah, definitely. So yeah, be sure, if you do have any questions, be sure to submit them on 5339.com/ask. And we will be sure to read them whenever we get them.
And thanks for the usernames. Some of them really make us laugh.
Some of them we can't even read on the air. So thank you.
Before we get into Lael's interview, there are a couple terms that we wanted to go over because they may not be something you're familiar with. And the first one's FKT, or fastest known time. And these are kind of like Strava segments on steroids. So, it really is just that. It's the fastest known time of a route. But these routes are typically like 100 to 150 miles minimum. So it's not a 30-second segment over in large Pennsylvania that you're trying to beat a certain somebody on that route.
Would that be me?
No, you're not. You don't have the KOM for that.
I know, but I'm a second ahead of you, slowpoke.
Are you a second, or did you beat me by like under a second?
A second ahead of you, precisely.
I couldn't remember. There's a couple that were like neck and neck on.
Dr. Evil, I know where you work, and I kind of know who you are. I'm not going to be able to beat your time because I'm getting an operation on my shoulder.
It's also not the time of year to break that segment.
I don't know. I could be behind you with a leaf blower in a car and get you to...
I'm just saying the colder air typically doesn't lead to faster times.
Yeah, nerd. Whatever.
Sorry. What can I do?
Anyhow, so, and then the other term is ultra endurance. It is what it is. It's really anything like an ultra endurance. For people that are ultra endurance athletes, a century is basically a warm up. But usually
they might not even be warm by that time.
Yeah, true. They might still be cold. Ultra endurance cycling often is 500 miles or more. For instance, like the Trans Am is 4,300 miles and Tour Divide is 2,745. And those are just the really popular ones. I mean, there's a few out this way that I know are about, I think, 1,300.
Yeah, there's a gravel route across Pennsylvania that's Sweetwater Bikes is doing next year that's like 800 miles total. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, ultra endurance is some serious riding time.
It's ultra endurance. It's literally it is the word. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just wanted to make sure you had some context, and when you hear some of these terms come up during the interview with Lael, because she throws mileage around like it's nothing.
Yeah, and she talks about going from one place to another on a map, and you're like, oh, that's 3 inches. Holy crap! That 3 inches is 3,000 miles.
And she did it on a bike.
And she did it on a bike in a month or two, and you're like, that's.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
She does like one event, and the ride to and from the event too is like all of my riding for the year.
I forget what event it is this year, but one of them is the prerequisite is you have to ride to the start line. Or was it you that was telling me about it?
Oh, that was the further east, which is the event over in the UK. It's a 400-mile self-supported race, and one of the rules is that you cannot drive to the start point. You have to ride there and camp out for the night.
I kind of like it.
Yeah, I like that too. But
I like that commitment.
What can you tell us about Lael?
Well, one, super awesome human to talk to. Just really honored that she took time out of her day to talk to us. But she's born and raised in Anchorage. Lael started commuting by bike in her 20s. Within a year, she was riding to and from work, and that became riding across the country and then all over the world. So she began ultra distancing in 2015, currently holds the women's record in the Tour Divide and Trans Am. Lael was motivated to encourage everyone on a bike, especially women, to ride. So in 2022, she'll organize the Tucson GRIT, a girls cycling mentorship program, and host 2 women's bikepacking challenges in Europe. You can follow her everywhere at Lael Wilcox. Some of the gear that she rides which I do recommend following her on Instagram, because some of the photos that Rue, her wife, takes for her are just outstanding. But you'll be able to see some of the gear that she runs and the bikes, which are incredible machines. I don't know. There's something about the one bike, I don't know which one it was, that I sent you with the aero bars, and it's like a gravel bike with aero bars. But so she has a specialized stump jumper.
Probably her Diverge, but I'm not positive of that.
Okay. Specialized stump jumper, specialized Epic Hardtail Pro, S-Works Tarmac, specialized Diverge, not Divenge.
Close enough.
Specialized Fuse, specialized Ruby Pro Disc Di2, specialized Fat Boy, which is a fat tire bike. And she also runs a few other Cannondales. I think I saw a Brompton in one of her pictures, but I don't know if she owns it. Salsa, Surly's, and Raleigh's. So really cool. Has a ton of bikes, which is why she obviously needs a bike cave in the house that she just bought, actually. So
yeah. Well, let's get to chatting with Lael.
Absolutely. Welcome to 5339, a podcast about cycling for cyclists by non-pros. Let's get to it. Well, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
I appreciate you coming on. We've been following you on Instagram lately, and it's you've been everywhere, really.
Yeah, it's been pretty jam-packed. We've spent the last 2 months in Europe and then got back a couple days ago, and my parents had driven down from Alaska, so they're in the area, and I'm in the desert, and the weather's perfect, and I'm going to go look for a house to buy this afternoon. So,
whoa,
trying to fit it all in between bike rides.
Well, I appreciate it. Good luck later.
Thank you.
It's always...
What is it with our guests being like in the house buying process? We've had now 3 that that have been in the house buying process when we've chatted.
I think most people in the world are in the house buying process right now. It seems like that's what's happening. A lot's changed since COVID, and people want to have their own space, and it's just become more important. So, and it's something I've been thinking about for a couple of years, and something I never thought I'd be able to do as a cyclist. So I'm just over the moon that this is a possibility.
That's awesome. Are you going to have like a dedicated bike cave?
I have to. There's got to be some indoor space for them. So.
One of our buddies was looking at houses this summer and ended up not finding one, but he was like, listen, if I find one that's close enough to your house, he's like, one of the rooms is for your spare bike, so your wife doesn't need to know about them.
Oh man, that's a good friend.
It's exciting to talk to you because, at least for me, endurance type stuff is really of my interest. I know Nick's kind of getting into it, and we watched your recent video on GCN with the FKT, which was amazingly done. Super impressed. So well done. I especially enjoyed how you basically dropped the one guy kind of.
Oh, what a mess.
So whenever you get into these FKTs and longer trips, how do you start the planning process? Because I would imagine a little complex at times.
Yeah, I mean, like that Oregon Outback ride, my favorite way to prepare for a big ride is to either ride to the start or actually ride the route before I go after a competitive effort.
Yeah.
And that's super helpful for planning because you know what you're going to see along the way, you know where you can find water, what the terrain's like, resupply points, because everything I do is self-supported. So I can't have anybody out there to help me. Having that knowledge and that memory is really helpful as far as kind of having an idea of strategy. But beyond that, it's I also, I want to see these places all in daylight at a touring pace. I don't want to just burn through trying to get the fastest time, because if I only did that, I'd feel like I was kind of missing out on like just enjoying the beauty of it and just being there and having the time to stop and talk. And I mean, yeah, that happens a bit during FKTs as well, but you can't like dedicate that time, and you don't have like the choice of, oh, should I stop and stay in this town or should I continue on? Like living in the place instead of just riding through as fast as you can. So if I can do both, then I do. Sometimes there isn't enough time, or, the season's too short to fit it in like that. But, if I can, I love that. Or riding to the start. Like my first big race was the Tour Divide in 2015, and that starts in Banff. And I actually rode there from Anchorage to get to the start of the race, which is a 2,100 mile ride just to get to the start of a 2,750 mile race. So by the end of it, I'm getting close to 5,000 miles in, about a month, and like basically crossing all of North America. So, it's like, and then you think about that, you like pull out a map and you look, and in 2 dimensions, you're like, well, what does it actually look like? Like what's it actually going to be like when I'm out there
across the map?
Yeah. And then you have this like bank of memories of like, oh, this is where I slept. This is where I ate. This is who I met. I mean, on that ride, I saw like 100 black bears, it's just unbelievable. Really cool. So if I try to give myself enough time to fit in like this, like approach adventure before the race. And then I feel like, I can like test out all my gear. I know what I want. I know what I need. I'm like used to altitude if there is any. I'm used to the local food or the local water, like racing around Kyrgyzstan. I toured that beforehand. So it's like, this is, your body and your mind are working together in preparation. And then it's also like, how happy are you to be out there? It's not just about winning. It's about like being in a place and like kind of having this experience of your own and then putting that into a race, and then I'm like, I get to do both. That's amazing.
I got to say, how shockingly beautiful is Kyrgyzstan, by the way.
It's unbelievable. It's so beautiful, and then looking at a map, would you ever guess that? Probably not. It's in like the middle of Central Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows, but it's amazing. Amazing place to ride.
I have a very good friend of mine that he does a lot for Nat Geo, and occasionally he'll send me some stuff that I help him out with. And so he sent me some photos, and he's like, oh, this is in Kyrgyzstan. And I was like, what? Wow.
Yeah.
I was just shocked. That's awesome. I like that approach. It's kind of, logical, really.
Well, it's funny because you talk about in the racing not being able to always enjoy the scenery, and we've had some pro Peloton riders on, and they've kind of said the same thing because they get to ride like a lot of the bucket list climbs and go to places that people are like dying to go to, as during part of their cycling life, and it's like they don't get to enjoy because they're either in the middle of the peloton and they can't see, or they're racing and they're not focused on what's going on outside. They're focused on what they're doing and what everybody around them is doing. So it's kind of funny how it translates into all levels of, or all disciplines of cycling. Yeah, it was. I'm pretty sure it was Ted that we talked to about that.
Talking about Italy, Ted King.
Yeah.
He was talking about Italy, and he's like, he and his wife just went a month or two ago, and he was like, yeah, it's the first time I was actually able to see everything outside of the race course because he had never been to that portion of the world. But no, that's really cool. Mm-hmm. Since you are self-supported, I'd imagine there's a lot that comes along with that. So from we can talk about the mechanical aspect and like supporting yourself that way if something breaks. But I always go to the mental state, because you have to kind of be in a special place to be able to output that amount of effort for that amount of time. Is there any like tactics that you use to kind of keep yourself in a positive space and kind of maintain that push and motivation?
Yeah. I mean, the things like when you're like kind of discussing this, the negatives basically are deprivation, sleep deprivation, physical deprivation, and a lot of pain. There's no other way that you could do it. So it's like those things are part of the game, and that's competition on any level, is that you're pushing your limits like that. But then you're like, that's also like something to kind of celebrate, because you're like, I'm capable of like getting to this edge and then overcoming it over and over and over. And then, for endurance, you're doing that for 2 weeks. you
Yeah.
That's
know,
super
and then you're
sweet.
seeing everything for that amount of time, you know, and like you are riding in the dark, but then the sunrise comes up and it's like pink clouds and it's like the most beautiful thing. And you'd never have seen that if you weren't out there, and you'd never be out there if you weren't competing. So, you know, it's like there's like an extreme amount of beauty and amount of like adventure and experience, but that comes at the cost of, you know, sleeping 4 hours a night, 2 hours a night, feeling pretty terrible at times, having your
Yeah.
knees really hurt. You know, it's like all these things are like playing into it. But then, you know, the thing I've found like over time is that like these negative feelings and even the pain passes. And you're like, okay, 1 minute you're in like total misery. And then the next you're like feeling incredible. You know, so it's like if you're willing to kind of like let it run its course, usually it's okay. Even, I mean, and that even goes into like, you know, having a mechanical. You're like, okay, well, I'm on the side of the road and I'm just praying that my tires will hold air. And then they do. And then you're so happy that they do. And you're like, I never thought this would give me so much joy. You know, to be like,
Yeah.
yes, the super glue works. You know, I mean, like, yeah, this is just like you're running this huge spectrum of emotions just to keep moving forward. And then I guess the other thing about it is like, it's pretty low stakes. You know, you're on like an adventure, but then if something really goes wrong, usually you can stop your ride, but then you still got to ride for 5 days to get there, you know, so it's not a failure because you still have this experience. It's
Yeah.
just, you know, it's just how it goes. And I guess that's part of it too, is that it's super unexpected. You're like, you don't know what's going to happen out there, what's going to go wrong, what's going to go right, what you're going to see. So that's exciting.
That's really cool. Yeah, I know before this, Nick and I were talking about, you know, you and kind of the research that we've done both kind of together and independently. And Nick was saying that in terms of like your recon and being able to kind of preview the route that you're going to do. What did you say exactly? I forget. Sorry, Nick.
Oh, I thought it was really cool that Rue was able to do that with you. Like, you know, you're
Yeah.
obviously a big mile cyclist, and it's just really cool that Rue gets to go with you at times and enjoys cycling as well. And it's really cool that you both can share that. I mean, my wife's a cyclist too, and because of school, she hasn't spent as much time in the saddle. So like we'll go out and like it's not her legs that bother her; it's time in the saddle that she just needs to
Right.
get back built up. But it's there's something about doing something like that with your partner and being able to go out and just enjoy the activity and sightseeing and all that. And you know, I think it's really cool that Rue came along to do the recon with you when you were up in Oregon.
Yeah, and also document it, because
Yeah,
if she
Yeah.
wasn't there, we wouldn't have a video. You know, and that's
That's
like
very
another
true.
piece of it too, is like it's one thing to just do these things, but then also to share them is entirely different, but also something I'm super motivated to do because I feel like video is the best form to actually inspire people to go do something. You know, it's like
Yeah.
you could tell them about your experience, or they could even kind of scroll through photos on social media and get a feeling. But if there's something about video that gets people actually out the door, where they're like, wow, I want to do that. You know, and it's worked for me too. It's like, you know, like seeing a video of somebody riding in Kyrgyzstan, I was like, I want to be there. You know, and it's like
yeah,
Yeah.
otherwise you don't do that. Or we were even joking about like the Mighty Ducks before this. It's like everybody saw that as a kid, and then they're like, I want to be an athlete. You know, that's cool. I mean,
uh-huh.
there's
Yeah.
like somehow it works. You know, but it's a complicated to make happen, especially these bike packing adventures, because they're so remote and so hard to access, and
Yep,
camera equipment is really heavy and
Yeah.
really precious, you know. So it's like but that's become like a bigger part of my life too, is trying to figure out how we can do that and share them. It's fun to do these things, but it's also fun to share them, and it's fun to design routes and share those as well, and just get more people trying it. You know, it's not just about what we can do ourselves, but that other people have access to this too. Anybody could get out there that
yeah.
That's
has
awesome.
the desire to.
So I mean, Andrew's mind when he's looking at your prep goes kind of towards the mental side. My mindset goes towards like, how do you figure out what setup you're going to use? I mean, I'm certainly a tech nerd. Like I love wrenching on my own bikes. How do you go through like, your setup? I mean, I know you work with Rennie Hurst a lot with the tires you use, but how do you pick the tires? How do you pick the bike? I mean, you obviously have drastic setups based on the type of ride you're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely focus more on comfort for endurance. You take like a normal dirt road or a gravel road, and then you think about riding that for 200 miles a day, and your experience changes dramatically. It's like stuff you could get through in a 2-hour ride is going to kind of drag you down. So I add in comfort, like having a suspension fork, having larger volume tires, having more forgiving gearing. I think about contact points, like your hands, your saddle, your feet. So it's like I try to have a lot of hand positions. I always use electronic shifting because it saves my hands. I generally have aero bars so I can get off my hands for a while and just rest on my elbows. I size up in my shoes because my feet swell up. It's like all those choices. It's a dozen different little choices, but it's things that I know work for me. And then it's like you figure what works for you through experience. But it's like at this point, bikes are so well designed and made that the bike's going to last a lot longer than your body is.
Yeah, that's a very valid point.
It's so true. It's like, yeah, I'm done. The bike's like, no, I got.
And the bike's just doing just fine, So it's like, how can I save like my hands, my feet, my seat? Like I don't ride in a chamois, and most people think that's crazy, but it's like, well, if you're racing for 2 weeks and you're putting on the same dirty chamois, you might have some problems, and a lot of people do. So, it's just figuring out, but then I have a super comfortable ergon saddle. And so I guess, over time, because before I ever raced, I was just living on my bike. So I kind of figured out what I liked, and I didn't think I'd ever compete. And then I just happened to do it. So I guess it works. What works for touring generally works for bike pack racing as well.
That's super awesome. Whenever you're doing kind of like training rides, or even like, it's hard to like not explain, but like try to ask this question. So like on your like shorter efforts, is there like, obviously you probably don't go as heavy whenever you're packing things and kind of getting ready. In terms of like mechanical go-tos, what is there something that like you're like, yeah, if I'm going, I don't know, a couple 100 miles or something, I'm going to take XYZ, and that's just every time that's like your default kit to go to.
As far as like how my bike's set up or the repair kit I bring, or
more like repair kit, I guess.
Yeah.
Like whenever I go on a ride, right, I got a tube, CO2, and the multi-tool, and that's about it.
More or less the same. Yeah.
Okay.
Add in sealant, tire plugs. I generally always on my bike have a spare derailleur hanger just because you need it.
That's smart. Yeah.
Let's see. A spare battery for shifting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brake pads. It just depends how far you're going and what shape your bike is in the first place. Or you could bring nothing and just hope for the best.
Wing it.
That seems to be a common theme at times.
It's nice just to get out the door. Often it's like, just, are your tires full of air? Are your brakes working? People say that kind of stuff. It's like the ABCs: make sure there's air in your tire, your brakes are working, and lube your chain. And that's about it, and then deal with it. Can you walk home? Then you're fine.
So super nerdy question for you though, since you mentioned the drivetrain, like how do you maintain that efficiency during, especially some of these longer rides? Cause if you're doing even a couple 100 miles on a, gravel trails, like that's going to get gunked up. So, at some point you've got to take care of that. So you're not expending more effort than you need to.
Yeah. And also you're not wasting time dealing with it though, too. So, I just bring chain lube and I just lube my chain. And then it's funny. It's like, if you're riding hundreds of miles a day, sometimes you have to lube it a couple times a day.
Yeah.
But, I think that the thing is, I think another aspect of this too, is that you just can't get too in the weeds with efficiency or performance, because it's like you're gonna
see that, Nick?
That's just gonna change. It's like, sometimes you feel great and you're just cruising, and then the next hour you're just feel like you're gonna die. And you just can't worry about that. Like I have gone through this quite a bit though, because you can get into this really negative cycle of like, I am just riding terribly. Why did I ever think I could do this? Why, and then you just get into this kind of self-loathing of like how everything that's going wrong. And
Yeah.
then I've gotten to this point where I'm like, okay, just ask yourself, is this the best I could possibly do right now? And if the
Yeah.
answer is yes, then let it go. There's nothing else you can do. If you are actually trying your hardest, that's it. That's about the limit you have, and then it's like any of the negativity isn't actually going to make you ride better. You're just going to feel bad,
Yeah.
and I mean, if you're sleep deprived, it's easy to get into those kind of dark
Oh, yeah.
places. So then it's like, okay, am I doing my best? Okay, then move on. Next thought, do I have water? Do I have food? Is my bike working? Like what's coming up? It's like you just have to kind of like accept where you're at, and then maybe an hour later you're like feeling great, and then you can enjoy that, But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, efficiency, I don't know.
It-
These bikes take a beating. You've been
They
out
do.
there
Yeah.
like in all the elements. I mean, the things that could really start driving you crazy are like all the noises they start making, and then I'm
They
like,
drive me
okay,
nuts
just
in 20 miles. I can only
listen
imagine
to
when you're on there for like
music.
2,000.
Do something else, But I mean, like I try to, if the race is like the Tour Divide, I like get a new chain halfway through,
Yeah.
get new tires halfway through, because like if you don't, then you could actually start having problems,
Yeah.
It's funny you bring that up. The other day, I'm coming back from breaking my collarbone, and Nick's dealing with some stuff. And like the other day, we both inadvertently took the day off from our day jobs, and we were like, I was like, hey, let's go for a ride. And he's like, well, what bike should I bring? What should I? And I was like, no, dude, just any bike, doesn't matter. Just let's get on the bike and let's go.
Yeah.
And credit where credit's due. Nick's the more analytical of the two of us. I'm just like, yeah, screw it, get on the bike and roll, which sometimes ends in hilarious disaster. But whatever. And it's just
Sprinkle
like
tracking on 25C tires.
Yeah.
well, yeah. Or like,
Not saying that that's happened or not happened.
or like going on the local. There's a local club that I just found on Strava, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. They do this like Thursday night. Like they, start one place, they go to a bar and, have a few drinks and then you bike back. I didn't really think about it. So I brought my road bike. I did some gravel, pretty heavy gravel, light mountain biking on 25C tires through Frick Park. Would not recommend. Like road tires have no traction at all. But anyhow, that's a different story for a different day. Is there like a go-to that whenever you come to these like little towns and things like that to kind of like perk you up? Like you're like, oh yeah, I want to do XYZ.
No, usually towns are like, you need the supplies. So then I try to have like a game plan of what I need to do. So it's more like business. Like I need to buy food. I need to get drinks. I need to fill my water. I need to lube my chain. I
Yeah.
need to get rid of trash. I need to change my batteries. I need to switch my GPS. There's like a laundry list of what needs to get done and how
Yeah.
efficiently can I do that and get back on my bike? Because that's where you lose time.
Okay.
Is like taking a break. Like take a mental break while you're actually out on the road.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Because you're moving forward. But that also depends on what are your goals. I want to win. Other people just want to ride. So, if that's what you want to do, go for a bike tour and stop in the town and have an ice cream.
That's true. Yeah.
So yeah, but then it's also like, well, I mean, like I found that I used to like when I started racing, I would never like stay in a hotel. I always slept outside because I was like, oh, you'll waste time checking in and all this stuff. But then, now I have more electronics, so I need to charge them. And I've
Yeah.
also found that, sometimes I'm actually faster if I go somewhere because I sleep in a bed, I get solid rest, I take a shower, and then I'm just like ready to go and I don't have to like unpack and repack all my gear. So I found like, kind of, I'm not as like strict in what I do. Like,
Okay.
I'm more like, okay, because it's always the game's what's going to be the fastest over time, you know,
Yeah.
and that changes depending on conditions. You know, if it's pouring rain outside, it's not going to be faster to try to find like some kind of shelter. And then it's like, I only bring like a bivy because it takes for most of the time, because it takes a lot of time to put up a tent and take it down. But then you
Okay.
deal with, you know, like if it's raining, then you're getting wet. If all your stuff gets wet, you have to dry it out at some point. So then you waste time doing that. So it's all about time efficiency, I guess. But
It
getting
makes
into town, yeah, it's like I usually try to think about what I need before I get there, because, you know, especially if you're super tired, it's so easy to like lose your focus.
yeah. It's kind of amazing how those like little creature comforts can kind of improve things in from like a long-term perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you said, versus sleeping on the ground versus getting an actual bed.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of cool to kind of see. So whenever you're on the bike, obviously nutrition's a really important thing. And, you know, Nick gives me a hard time because I think we went 2 years of biking together and you only saw me eat once. um,
One time.
One time. And I've gotten better about the whole, you know, nutritional thing, but like, how do you, how do you handle that on your longer trips and maintaining that time aspect?
Yeah, you have to eat a lot. You know, if I mean, I used to try to eat like 10,000 calories a day.
Okay.
And I mean, you're burning way more than that.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So it's like you're always at a deficit. I always lose weight. But I guess I've stopped worrying as much about it because I'm like, okay, well, there's only so much you can actually eat and process. And then also it's like, what are you actually going to find along the way? Like racing in Kyrgyzstan, there aren't like gas stations.
No.
You know, I mean, it's like if I found a Snickers, I was like, wow, amazing. This is like real food versus like fried bread or crackers. Or, you know, once I found like hard boiled eggs on a counter, so I ate those. I had to peel them on my bike.
Nice.
You know, there just isn't like, what do you find? In Mexico, I did a FKT down the Baja Peninsula and I had little burritos. I'd get like 10 at a time, or quesadillas. Because it's like, what are you actually going to find? But, you know, I mean, riding versus like running, it's like you can actually eat on the bike and
Mm-hmm.
continue to go. But it's like, yeah, just find what works for you. I started this year like getting pints of ice cream and I let them melt and
Oh,
then drink them.
Yeah.
And that's like pretty powerful food. I used to drink a lot of milk. But you know, I have started, so I'm working with Gnarly for nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
okay.
And I've started having vegan protein and greens shakes in the morning and at night. And I found that that actually helps performance a ton.
That's awesome.
So that's nice, but then it's like, how many of them can I carry?
I've heard their stuff is actually pretty. I've never tried it, but I've heard that they're pretty legit in terms of like nutritional balance versus like not being totally terrible, taste wise at least.
Right.
Um,
They actually taste really good, but then they're also just like packed with nutrients.
yeah,
Um, and, you know, and I mean, basically, I was like, well, I can't. I used to be really strict about that too, because I was like, well, you can't find that stuff along the way, and I don't want to carry extra weight, so I'm not gonna like do that. I'm just gonna, you know, get milkshakes and hot dogs or whatever. But then I found like there's a balance to that, like where it's like, of course, you're gonna have to have milkshakes and hot dogs too. You can't just live off of protein shakes.
yeah,
But having that like as a supplement in addition to regular food makes a big difference, you know, as far as recovery goes. So that's cool that you can just kind of tack that on and then perform better. But,
yeah,
you know, that is something new for me and I'm excited about. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to keep up, you know, and I mean, like, none of this is healthy. It's not healthy to ride 200 miles a day for 2 weeks and try to eat 10,000 calories and sleep 4 hours a night. You know, like that's like not healthy, but it's like something that I want to achieve, you know,
yeah,
so I'm willing to like deal with it. And then there are also like, you know, of course, there's just a lot of positives and a lot of negatives, but then ultimately I want to be out there because it's exciting and fun, and I like racing and I like seeing places.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. Just real quick, are we still good on time?
Oh, with me,
Yeah.
whenever we can finish is great because I've got another call after this too. So
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we got about 3 or 4 more questions. So if that's all right.
sure.
All right.
So
So
you've talked a lot about,
yep.
wanting to win and enjoying the racing scene, but so like what's kind of the ultimate goal for you?
I don't have one.
No future like big plans or anything like that, or you just
No,
want
I
to.
mean, I've just been doing this, and it's like I don't usually think more than a couple months in the future, but it's whatever's coming up and I'm excited about. So just really grateful to be doing what I love.
That's awesome. So are there any like really like funny kind of memorable experiences through all of your kind of races uh, that could just kind of stand out to you?
um, let's see. Let's see. I'm just thinking about the summer. Um, I've just got a lot going. Do you have anything specific?
Not really. I mean, or even like something like you talked about the sunrise, right? And that's an amazing thing whenever you're biking all night and it's just like that just pink glow starts to appear and you're like, oh, finally. Um, is there anything like that you've experienced along the way that is really just kind of just sticks with you and you're like, man, if I could experience that one more time, that'd be amazing.
I feel like it happens every ride.
That's cool.
Yeah. Most recently I was in Switzerland and before that the UK, and I did a really cool ride from women's bike packing challenge from Turin, Italy to Nice, France that I organized probably 3 weeks ago. Um,
Cool.
and so, I really love, like, I do love to race and I love to tour, but I also like kind of a mix of the two where it's like a challenge, but not necessarily a race. So we
Hmm.
Yeah.
did 700 kilometers from Turin, Italy to Nice, France with like 10 climbs through the Italian and French Alps.
Oh,
And the
how
idea
cool.
was everybody starts together and
Wow.
you try to finish in a week. But then you're like, okay, then you have time to camp, you have time to stop in cafes, time to like catch up with one another and exchange stories. And so that was super fun. That was, I guess we finished beginning of October, so a month
Okay.
ago. And then, yeah, that was super cool. Right before that, I was in Iceland helping scout 1100K route in the West Fjords. And
Okay.
that's going to be Iceland's first official bike touring route. So the idea was to go out there, ride the route, capture media, and then we'll publish it and people can come ride it.
That's really sweet.
Yeah, and it was my first time in Iceland. Really fun to be there with a really positive crew and to see the beauty of the place. I mean, it's like another planet. It's
Yeah.
like hyper green and geothermal with hot springs and crazy weather, super windy, but stunning. So
Yeah.
it's fun to have like different projects that are outside of racing, outside of just my own adventures, like trying to build something for other people to do as well. So I like kind of incorporating that, but it's been basically I've been on the go since beginning of May. So it's like even trying to remember all the things that happened are there's a lot. I did a time trial on the Tour Divide this summer again,
Okay.
and I had to stop because of the wildfires in the West.
Oh,
It's devastating. It's like I feel like the way people will care the most about the world is seeing it for themselves. And
yeah.
if you see it in a human powered way, you really connect. And so that's, I guess, part of my drive to continue doing these things, sharing media, sharing routes, creating opportunities, is that the more people that do that get their own adventure and also get a connection to the land that often we miss out on.
And
Um,
I
in
think
the modern world, we sit in front of screens a lot of the time, and you see a lot doing that. You see a lot, but does
It's
it have the
sterile.
same impact?
Yeah, it
yeah,
doesn't.
No.
It certainly doesn't.
you don't experience it. And that's kind of one of the things why we really want to talk to you is because both Nick and I are really big on like the just everybody's welcome. Traditionally, cycling has kind of like an elitist, in air quotes, um, to it. And that's one of the things I love about what you're doing is you're sharing the experience from both a visual experience, but then also the emotional component as well, like what you can kind of get out of it as well. And then also it's like, hey, here's the route I did, check this out. And I love that kind of, I mean, I'm in tech, so like calling it open source is, that's makes sense to me, but like just kind of this like, oh, here's all the stuff you need. If you want to do it, great. That's, feel free to experience it. And that's, I think we need more people like that to kind of foster inclusivity, I guess you
or
could say.
even just like bridge the gap from like most kids like learn how to ride a bike.
Yeah.
And then like it actually doesn't have to get that much more complicated because it's like you learn how to ride a bike and you like it, and
Yeah.
it's fun and it's like real transportation and it's freedom. And it's like there's, I think that's why cycling is so kind of everybody has some sort of sense like relates to it because they have their own experience doing it. We don't. So I think it's like if we can remember that that's the essential piece, and then it's like it can get as complicated or niche as you want it to, but when it comes down to it, we're all just pedaling, and then it's like the experience doesn't change that much. Like that first free feeling of like getting on a bike and moving forward and feeling the air in your face and you're going somewhere and you're excited about it. It's like, that's like the core of it. And then it's like, well, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? How fast do you want to do it? That changes that. But then I feel like people kind of lose sight of like they look more at the differences than the like similarity of it. It's like we are actually all doing the same thing, and that's really cool.
It's super nice to get back there though. Like that's like through the like evolution of like personal cycling, you can become really numbers focused and kind of driven, but I feel like we all need to kind of just get back to that base and go, yeah, we're just riding a bike, enjoy it, explore, and just enjoy life,
Yeah, enjoy it.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's like you don't have to do it any specific way, or you're not doing it wrong. You're like you're
only doing it wrong if you're not doing it.
Exactly. Exactly. Like if you're doing it right. And then if you like want to change it, then change it. There are no strict rules of what's the best or what's necessary. But I mean, there's a lot of room for us to have a lot of fun out there.
Hell yeah. So we always wrap with two questions, and obviously for you, it's a little bit different because I feel like given the stable of bikes that you always have or that you have, it's kind of a hard question to ask, but is there like a dream bike that you have or is there a bike that whenever you were like younger that you always wanted, or I always equivalent it to that like Lamborghini poster that like little kids have on their wall, or that fighter jet or whatever it is. Yeah.
I mean, I've got like just even thinking right now, I have 3 bikes that I am super pumped on. I just got a new Specialized Crux. That's
nice.
Came out early October, and then it's got the full SRAM Explorer build. So the Rudy fork, and I'm really excited about that bike because I've been riding the Diverge since it came out in 2017, and I really like that bike too. But I'm like, oh, we could have like a lighter, faster version with the suspension fork, and I've been running a suspension fork and drop bars on a Specialized Epic hardtail since 2019. So this is like kind of like the trimmed down version of that. And so I'm really pumped on that, but I have only ridden it once. So that's kind of going to be my go-to mixed gravel and pavement endurance bike. And I'm excited for that. And then I have a Specialized Athos, which is probably the nicest bike I will ever own.
Yeah.
I mean, that bike is such a dream. And my favorite thing to do on a bike is climb. And that bike is totally built and designed for it.
You can't get a much better bike to climb
that's
than
about
that.
like heaven, And then I have a Epic Evo, which is like unbelievable game changer of a full suspension bike. It's like why would you ever ride a hardtail again? Because it's so light and reliable and fast and fun and comfortable and everything good. So, I
That's
feel like
awesome.
that lineup of 3 bikes, like if those were my 3 bikes for the rest of forever, I'd probably be pretty happy. Which is like, it's amazing to even say that, because it's like bikes are always changing. They're doing this and that, but like they're really nailing it. It's really,
Yeah.
I'm like, can this get any better? I don't know. It's so like you have like no sacrifices as far as weight goes with ability. It's like these bikes could do everything, and they're all building them with larger tire clearance, like across the board. And I love that direction too, because bigger tires aren't slower, especially not for endurance. So
I was trying to explain that to a friend yesterday, actually. He was like, these tires are huge, because he comes from like a road background, and he's like, what does the mayor have now? It's a Trek.
He's got a checkpoint.
Oh, checkpoint. He's like, he's running like 40s on it, and he's like, these are so big. And I was like, he's like, oh, it's so slow. And I was like, dude, 40s are pretty fast. Like, it's just about, you got to find that balance of pressure and, kind of figure out.
It's just different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm thrilled with the way bikes are right now. Disc brakes on everything. It's really good. Electronic shifting on everything. One buy on almost everything. It's like everything's getting kind of streamlined and super, super cool. The only problem right now is that you can't really get much because it's not available.
It's not. Yeah, no, that's not.
But that means more people are biking too, which is super cool. But it's
my hope is that sticks around.
Same. Yeah.
So we'll wrap with this question, Lael, and for those that are trying to get into bike packing, what would your advice be for those newbies to the bike packing side of the sport?
Yeah, I would say if you're interested in bike packing, then just basically just go do it in whatever capacity you can with the gear you have right now. Go for an overnight, even if you don't have any of the bags, just put it in a backpack, go camp out somewhere, even if it's somewhere familiar, ride home the next day, and then just see what you think. Was it fun? Instead of spend the time outside instead of inside, spend the time like having your own experience, and then come back and think, and then you'll have like fresh eyes to think about where you want to go, how you want to do it, what's important, because I feel like it's such a broad topic as far as like, you could go bike packing on a road bike, you could go on the Colorado Trail, you could go like either, in the snow. It's like, what's actually accessible? What do you want to do? Maybe start with something that makes sense as far as like your skills of what you already do, where you live, the time you have available. Because like, I think as soon as it becomes kind of real, as far as like you've actually done something, then you have like somewhere to start.
That's awesome. No, I like that.
Yeah. Good advice.
But thank you so much. I know your time is limited, so I really appreciate you coming on and talking with us. And it's great talking to you.
Yeah, great to talk with you too.
So thanks so much, and good luck later with the house.
Good luck later.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review wherever you listen and tell your friends. It helps us get more listeners just like you. Also, be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and even Twitter. If you are enjoying this podcast and want us to continue to bring you entertaining guests and talk about interesting things, please consider contributing to us on Patreon. We appreciate your support. We're always open to suggestions for new topics, advice, and interviews. If you have a topic or a question you'd like to hear about, be sure to drop us a line at 5339cycling.com/topics or email us at info@5339cycling.com. Hammer on, everybody.